Get ready everyone for the dictation practice exercise 2. We live in a world of conflicts, and yet the world goes on undoubtedly because of the cooperation of nations and operation, and there is today a vast amount of cooperation even between countries which are opposed to each other in the political or other fields. Little is known or said about this cooperation that is going on, but a great deal is said about every point of conflict, and therefore the world is full of the idea that we live on the verge of disaster. It would perhaps be a truer picture if the cooperating elements in the world were put forward and we were made to think that the world depended on cooperation and not on conflict. A proposal has been made by many persons to the effect that more attention should be directed to the cooperative ventures, especially for peace and in the interest of peace, so that more positive thinking may take place on this subject and people may realize that this cooperation is already taking place and can be extended. Some years ago, it was resolved to have an international geophysical year. That was a specific subject. However, it has been suggested that perhaps this assembly might resolve to call upon all countries of the world to devote a year to the furtherance of cooperative activities in political, cultural, and the many other fields, not to mere speeches about peace, that perhaps will direct some of our energy and some of our thinking to this idea of cooperation, which will create an atmosphere helpful for solving the problems more easily. That by itself will not solve any problem, but it will lessen this distrust and conflict which affect the world. I make this suggestion to you not in any detail but broadly so that this assembly might consider it, and if it is worthwhile, perhaps appoint a committee to consider it further and make suggestions as to how this might perhaps be done. The great men of the world have been those who have fought hatred and violence, and not those who have encouraged it. We have arrived at the stage when, even in some worthwhile cause, hatred and violence have to be checked. This requires a new way of thinking, a new development of humanity. Possibly, we are going through that process, and this very crisis will wake up the mind of man and direct it to this new way of thinking. What shall it profit the world if it conquers the material ills and then commits suicide because it has not controlled its own mind? Question mark. You can now translate this exercise 2, or you can translate along with the exercise 3. So get ready everyone for the dictation practice. Exercise 3, the speed will be the same, 60 words per minute. Get ready. I have repeatedly been impressed during my visits to the Soviet Russia and to the United States by the many things they have in common. I am thinking more about the people than about politics. The people in both countries are, in some ways, remarkably similar to each other. They are frank and hospitable and are exceedingly friendly. Essentially, I am thinking of one common feature today in the Soviet Russia and in America, namely the concentration of technological and scientific development as a means to progress. The Russians, in spite of their political differences, are full of admiration for the technological civilization which the United States has built up. They want to do even better. Theirs is a competitive approach. It is because of this, I think, that once they get over the present day political difficulties, the people of the Soviet Russia and the United States are likely to come much nearer to each other than possibly other countries might. America, by and large, is a welfare state. There may be odd things here and there which do not fit in with this concept, but it is a welfare state. You have solved your problems of providing the primary necessities of life to the people. We in India have not. Our problems in India are fundamentally concerned with the primary necessities of life. In that sense, our problems are different from yours. Therefore, the pure American approach does not often fit in because you think in terms of an affluent society. For example, you may think in terms of highly mechanized agriculture, but it may not suit India. Not that we are against mechanization, but it may not fit in with the conditions in India. In the Soviet Russia, there has certainly been a very marked and progressive change from the rigid authoritarianism of Stalin's time. We must remember that in the Soviet Russia, at any rate, in the greater part of it, they never had anything but some kind of authoritarian government, whether it was the Tsar's government or any other government. From that, they went on to a communist regime which has brought them some advantages, undoubtedly, but at the cost of individual liberty. They do not feel the lack of it very much, but ultimately, everyone feels the lack of individual liberty and lack of individual freedom. Stop. Thank you.